For 15 seconds, imagine this: the sea is calm, still, almost peaceful, as if the Pacific itself is holding its breath. In the darkness before dawn, American ships drift silently, their crews exhausted from days of battle. They believe they are safe, protected, guarded. But out beyond the black horizon, shapes glide through the water, silent, invisible, deadly. Within minutes, the ocean will erupt in fire, ships will be torn apart, and hundreds will vanish beneath the waves. Welcome to the moment when an entire fleet is caught off guard, and the United States Navy faces one of the most shocking surprises in its entire history. Hello and welcome to the channel. Today, we dive deep into the extraordinary and devastating story of the Battle of Savo Island, often called America's darkest naval defeat of World War II. This script will unfold in 3 detailed parts, exploring both the interior world of strategy, fear, and human decision-making, and the exterior world of ships, torpedoes, explosions, and the raw violence of naval warfare. Together, these perspectives will recreate the night when everything went wrong, and the consequences that reshaped the Pacific War. The story begins with the Allied landings on Guadalcanal in August 1942. For months, the Japanese had dominated the Pacific, striking boldly and relentlessly across the region. But now, for the first time, the Allies were pushing back, launching an ambitious amphibious offensive designed to seize a strategic airfield the Japanese were building. This airfield, later known as Henderson Field, held the potential to cut Japanese supply lines and give the Allies a foothold that could change everything. Exteriorly, thousands of Marines stormed the beaches, moving inland to secure the island. Interiorly, tension pulsed through every officer present, because they knew Japan would not surrender the island without a brutal fight. To protect the Marines ashore, a powerful screening force of Allied cruisers and destroyers formed a defensive circle around Savo Island, guarding the approaches from the north and south. The Americans assumed that their nighttime security was tight enough, and that Japanese forces, even if nearby, would hesitate to attack such a well-armed fleet. But assumptions, especially in war, can be deadly. Inside their ships, American and Australian sailors were exhausted. They had been in constant operations for nearly 2 days, unloading supplies, maintaining patrols, and studying signals intelligence. Fatigue settled into their bones. The crews on the northern and southern patrol groups moved at a scanny but wary pace, scanning the darkness with binoculars, straining their ears for any unusual sound. Yet even these precautions could not protect them from what they could not see. For the Japanese Navy had mastered night combat in ways the Americans had not yet begun to understand. Far to the north, Admiral Mikawa led a fast, silent Japanese strike force composed of heavy cruisers and a light cruiser, all seasoned with combat experience and equipped with the WWII Long Lance Torpedo, one of the most advanced naval weapons on Earth. Exteriorly, Mikawa's ships cut through the night like shadows, no lights, no signals, no wasted movement. Interiorly, Mikawa carried a fierce determination to halt the Allied advance and protect Japan's fragile defensive perimeter. He knew the risks were enormous. If his ships remained in the area after attacking, they could be destroyed by American carrier aircraft the next morning. But despite this danger, Mikawa believed the opportunity to strike a catastrophic blow was worth everything. As the Japanese force approached Savo Island, a series of Allied failures began to pile up. A scout plane spotted Mikawa's ships but filed a delayed and incomplete report. Then, an American destroyer on patrol sighted a flare fired by a Japanese aircraft, but misinterpreted it as friendly. Even as the Japanese closed the distance, multiple opportunities to detect them were missed, dismissed, or ignored. These were not failures of courage. They were failures of fatigue, communication, and assumptions. On the interior level, the Allied command was overloaded, stretched thin, convinced that the Japanese were unlikely to launch an attack so soon after the landings. Exteriorly, the sea seemed empty, deceptively calm. By midnight, Mikawa's force was practically within striking distance. The American cruisers lay quiet at anchor or in slow patrol, the USS Quincy, USS Vincennes, and the Australian cruiser HMAS Canberra, among others. Their crews slept in their bunks, or worked quietly in the dim, lit interiors of their ships, unaware that death was moving rapidly toward them through the darkness. What little alertness remained was limited, scattered, almost symbolic. No one imagined an entire Japanese strike force could slip past their defenses. Mikawa organized his cruisers into an attack formation and prepared for the assault. His men were trained for this exact kind of engagement. Japanese night optics were superior. Their crews drilled relentlessly, their torpedoes were unmatched, and above all, they were motivated by the belief that a decisive blow could halt the Allied advance in its tracks. The first moment of contact came when Japanese lookouts identified the sill of HMAS Canberra. Without hesitation, Mikawa ordered his ships to open fire. A blinding flash erupted from the Japanese cruisers, lighting up the night sky with burning arcs of tracer fire and explosive shells. Exteriorly, it was as if lightning had slammed into the sea. Shells tore into Canberra's hull before her crew could even man their battle stations. Interiorly, panic surged through the ship as sailors leapt from their racks, scrambling in darkness filled with smoke, heat, and the sounds of metal twisting apart. Within minutes, Canberra was crippled, listing heavily, fires raging uncontrollably. The sudden violence of the attack shocked everyone. They had been struck with terrifying precision, and more importantly, with no warning. This was the first indicator of how thoroughly the Japanese had achieved surprise. As Canberra burned, Mikawa pressed forward, sending more torpedoes streaming into the formation. These torpedoes carved silent paths through the water, leaving no wake visible in the dark. American ships, unaware of their presence, continued routine movements, making them perfect targets. The torpedoes were already on their way long before any Allied ship even realized an attack was underway. Next, Mikawa's force collided with the northern cruiser group, USS Astoria Quincy, and USS Vincennes. The engagement erupted with ferocious intensity. The Americans, caught completely off guard, initially mistook the incoming fire for friendly shots. It took precious moments before they realized the horrific truth, that they were being hit by a coordinated Japanese assault. Exteriorly, bright geysers of fire exploded from their decks. Shells detonated along their superstructures. Torpedoes impacted beneath their hulls, lifting entire sections of steel into the air. Interiorly, chaos reigned as sailors rushed to their posts, only to find systems offline, watertight doors jammed, or entire compartments filled with smoke. USS Quincy was struck particularly hard. A torpedo slammed into her port side, ripping open a massive wound that sent seawater flooding rapidly. Shellfire tore into her bridge, killing many of her officers instantly. Despite the chaos, Quincy's crew fought valiantly, firing back with whatever guns remained operational, but the Japanese fire was relentless and accurate. Quincy soon began to list uncontrollably. Nearby, USS Astoria attempted to respond, firing salvos toward the faint flashes of enemy guns. But Astoria was in a losing battle. Shells rained onto her decks, igniting fires that burned furiously. Interiorly, officers attempted to regain command and organize damage control teams, but the damage had spread too quickly. Fire mains ruptured, ammunition stores detonated, and the ship was enveloped in thick black smoke. USS Vincennes faced the same catastrophe. Hit repeatedly, she began to burn bow to stern. Her crew fought to keep her guns operational, but visibility was near zero and her interior compartments were turning into infernos. Exteriorly, the scene was a nightmare. A burning cruiser surrounded by silhouettes of Japanese warships, all firing with precision and confidence. Through all of this, the Japanese maintained their tactical advantage. They continued to maneuver with agility, firing torpedoes and shells while presenting minimal targets. Their night fighting doctrine was flawless. Their discipline was breathtaking, and their timing was deadly accurate. Meanwhile, the Allied command struggled to understand the scope of the disaster. Signals were confused, misinterpreted, or drowned in static. Some commanders believed they were under attack from aircraft, others from submarines. The true nature of the assault became clear only after multiple ships were already mortally wounded. One of the most tragic elements of the battle was how little coordination the Allies could muster. The northern and southern groups were unable to support one another effectively. Destroyers that could have launched torpedo counterattacks were either out of position or unaware of the exact enemy location. The overall structure of the defense collapsed under the sudden and overwhelming pressure. Still, not everything went perfectly for Mikawa. His own formation became momentarily scattered during the attack as individual ships maneuvered aggressively to evade potential counter-fire. But the Americans, disoriented and engulfed in flames, were in no position to exploit this. By around 20:30 a.m., the battle had reached its devastating conclusion. The Japanese force withdrew, moving swiftly away from the battlefield, before dawn could expose them to American aircraft. Mikawa's decision to retreat has been debated by historians ever since. Some argue he should have pressed the attack to destroy the transport ships that were still anchored near Guadalcanal. Others believe his withdrawal was wise, preserving his cruisers for future engagements. Either way, Mikawa had already achieved a stunning tactical victory. In less than 1 hour of combat, 4 Allied cruisers were sunk or fatally damaged, and more than 1,000 sailors were dead or wounded. The Americans were left reeling, shocked by the sheer scale of the defeat. Dawn revealed the full magnitude of the disaster. The Pacific horizon glowed a pale orange, as smoke still drifted from the burning wrecks. Rescue operations began immediately. Allied ships moved carefully among debris fields, pulling survivors from the water. Many sailors clung to floating wreckage, their bodies burned, battered, or covered in oil. Interiorly, grief and disbelief hung heavy in the air. Men wept for lost comrades. Officers struggled to comprehend how such a powerful force could have been surprised so completely. The sinking of HMAS Canberra, USS Astoria, USS Quincy, and USS Vincennes marked one of the worst defeats in American naval history. Beyond the loss of life, the psychological shock was profound. For months, the Japanese had displayed superior fighting capabilities, but Savo Island exposed the full extent of that skill. It was a wake-up call, loud, violent, impossible to ignore. In Washington and Pearl Harbor, the news hit like a thunderbolt. Admirals demanded explanations. Investigations began almost immediately. Reports revealed a long chain of misjudgments: fatigue, poor communication, underestimated enemy capability, insufficient radar usage, and lack of cohesive defensive planning. Each mistake might have been survivable on its own, but layered together, they formed a trap from which the Allied ships could not escape. Exteriorly, the loss of 4 heavy cruisers left the Guadalcanal campaign dangerously exposed. Japanese reinforcements could have counterattacked the beachhead at any moment. But as fate would have it, the Japanese did not immediately capitalize on the victory. Their own doctrine and logistical limitations held them back, buying precious time for the Marines on Guadalcanal to dig in and strengthen their hold on the airfield. Interiorly, the defeat ignited a transformation within the U.S. Navy. Officers reworked strategies. Night fighting training intensified. Radar became a central component of future operations. New doctrines emerged, emphasizing readiness, coordination, and adaptability. The lessons learned at Savo Island would eventually help the United States dominate the later stages of the Pacific War. Yet the memory of that night lingered. survivors carried it for the rest of their lives. Some spoke of the terror of waking to explosions. Others remembered the unbearable heat of onboard fires, or the feeling of cold seawater rushing into their compartments. Many recalled acts of incredible bravery: sailors who stayed at their posts to keep guns firing, engineers who refused to abandon engine rooms until power failed, officers who died trying to save their men. Amid the chaos and tragedy, courage burned brightly. On a broader sense, the Battle of Savo Island serves as a reminder of how fragile confidence can be in war. Even the strongest fleets, if unprepared or inattentive, can be devastated in a single night. The defeat forced the United States Navy to confront its own weaknesses. It reminded commanders that the enemy should never be underestimated. And it proved that technological superiority alone is never enough without discipline, planning, and awareness. As the Guadalcanal campaign continued, the memory of Savo Island motivated sailors and officers to fight harder, smarter, and with deeper resolve. They were determined that such a disaster would never happen again. In the months that followed, the Allies began to win more naval engagements, gradually turning the tide of the Pacific War. The Battle of Savo Island stands today not simply as a story of loss, but as a story of lessons learned, lessons that reshaped an entire navy and contributed to ultimate victory. It is a powerful testament to the unpredictable nature of war, the price of underestimating the enemy, and the resilience required to recover from defeat. As we close this story, imagine once more the darkness of that night, the sudden eruption of fire, the chaos, the determination, and the silence that followed. From that silence emerged a stronger navy, a determined military, and a deeper understanding of what it meant to fight in the vast Pacific. Thank you for watching and staying with us through this journey into one of the most dramatic and haunting naval battles in American history. If you enjoyed this deep dive into war history, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us next time as we explore more forgotten, hidden, and extraordinary stories from World War II.